This video is going to teach us some other ways that we can change an improper fraction to a mixed number. I have the improper fraction of 15/12, and let's go ahead and look at that with fraction bars. So 1/12, 2/12, 3/12, 4/12, 5/12, 6/12, 7/12, 8/12, 9/12, 10/12, 11/12, 12/12. I know that 12 of the pieces do make a whole. I can double check with my fraction bar here. And then we have 13/12, 14/12, and 15/12. So I can see that this is 1 3/12. Now sometimes we don't always have fraction bars, or our numbers are so big it takes a lot of pieces, and it kind of gets tedious having to count out all the pieces all the time. So in math, there are always lots of shortcuts that we can take, and we're going to talk about two of those shortcuts today. One way is to just look at the number 15/12 and think about what it takes to make a whole. So I'm going to write it again down here. I know that 12/12 equals 1 whole. So I can go ahead and say that's 1 whole. And then I know that 15 is larger than 12. 15 take away 12 is 3. I can see that the difference is 3. There'd be 3 extra pieces. And then the size of the piece are 12ths. We don't change the size of the piece at all, so that stays the same. We know that we have the 3 extra 12th pieces. So that's the first way, is to just reason it out in your head, and kind of like what we were doing yesterday when you were drawing your picture or using your fraction bars. I asked you to start predicting or guessing how many holes you would have enough pieces for. And that was so you could start to reason it out. The second way is to show my work with division. I'll go ahead and write this as a division problem. We take the top number, the numerator, and we divide it by the denominator. Now remember back to our lessons about division, and remember that this divisor can either be the number of groups or the number of things in each group. And when we're converting to a mixed number, the 12, the divisor, is the number of things in each group. It's the number of pieces to make a whole. So remember, our original problem is 15/12. So I can actually draw 15 pieces. And then I would go ahead and draw 15. So 3 more. When we think about 15 divided by 12, I know that 12 times 1 is 12. So when I go to subtract that, I get 3 left over. And remember that 12 is the number of pieces in each group. So I had enough that I could go ahead and make one group. I have 3 pieces left over, and that's what this 3 is showing, is that's a remainder. So 1 remainder 3 is telling me that I had enough pieces to make 1 whole, and then I had 3 pieces left over. So I can look at this and figure out that that's the whole, and then this is the number of pieces left over. So 1 whole and 3/12. Let's look at 13/8. So 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, 8/8, 9/8, 10/8, 11/8, 12/8, 13/8. So I can see that that is equal to 1 and 5/8. If I wanted to figure that out without using fraction bars, I could just think about the number of pieces it would take to make a whole. So I know that 8/8 equals a whole. Sometimes we write that even up to the side just to keep track of it. 8/8 is 1 whole. If I go to 2 wholes, that would be 16/8. If I just had 3 more pieces, I would have had 16 altogether, 16/8, which would have been equal to 2 wholes. But I only have 13 pieces, so I only have enough for 1 whole. And again, I'm going to try to figure out what the difference is so I can figure out these extra pieces. So find out what 13 take away 8 is. And that's a difference of 5, and we know that we're working with 8s. So 1 and 5/8. If you want to show it with division, you can do that. Remember the original improper fraction of 13/8. So I show 13 divided by 8. Remember that 8 is the number of pieces in the whole, or the number of things in each group. So you can even draw 8s. I know that 8 times 1 is 8, so I can subtract, and I get 5, so 1 remainder 5. That means I had enough pieces to go ahead and make 1 whole, and there were 5 left over. That's what the remainder shows. Then we know that the pieces are 1/8 pieces. That's the size of the piece. There we get 1 and 5/8, just showing it with division. Let's try finding the mixed number name using these 2 methods first, and then we'll check our work with the fraction bars. So I'm going to think about how many pieces it takes to make a whole. And I know that 2 halves equals a whole. So I know that if I kept that up, if I did 4 halves, that would be 2 wholes. If I had 6 halves, that would be 3 wholes. If I had 8 halves, that would be 4 wholes. If I had 10 halves, that would be 5 wholes. So I have enough that I can make 5 wholes. There will be 1 piece left over because 11 take away 10 is 1. And then we're working with halves. So 11 halves equals 5.5. If you want to use division and solve it that way, you can think 2 times what is close to 11? So 2 times 5. We can subtract and we get 1. we get 5 remainder 1. And then you have to think about what that means. It means that you had enough pieces that you were able to make 5 groups. So you were able to make 5 holes. There was 1 piece left over, and then of course the size of the piece are halves. So we have 5 and 1/2. I can check my work with fraction bars. There's 1/2, 2 halves, 3 halves, 4 halves, 5 halves, 5 halves, 6 halves, 7 halves, 8 halves, 9 halves, 10 halves, and we have 11 halves. Okay, we have enough for 1 hole, 2 holes, 3 holes, 4 holes, 5 holes, and the 1/2 left over. So we did use the shortcuts correctly, and we got the right answer of 5 1/2.